Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for coming. Shall I stand in the light? You can see me, right? If I stand here, yeah. So my name is Koen Suidgeest. First of all, this is maybe a good moment, and there will be other moments to thank the festival for, to thank Karin for calling me and saying, "Oh, I remember you told me about your dad and the photos you were taking." It was true, and I had totally forgotten about the possibilities of those photos. So it's really Karin and the festival that brought them back to life. Pretty much after my dad passed away, I stopped photographing and I kind of had them on a shelf. So I want to tell you about this project that is downstairs. I hope you've seen it. If not, I invite you to come. I'll definitely be there also after this talk. If someone can keep an eye on the time, so I might well take you to dinner time, but I think I only have half an hour. But I wanted to touch on something else first, and that's something in my own professional development. So I'm a filmmaker and a photographer. I make documentary films, and actually for a long time I thought I was more a filmmaker than a photographer, because I traveled a lot, and usually during the breaks I would take photos. So we were filming, and then we'd go and have lunch or something. There was something interesting, I would take some photos. And okay, I did a couple of projects and stuff, but I never really identified as a filmmaker. And then I thought, as a photographer, sorry. And then I thought, okay, I should discover this, whether I'm really a photographer. And I was looking for some courses, some workshops, whatever, and I thought if I can take my body of work there and just have other people look at it, and maybe someone will tell me, you are a photographer, after all. So I ended up at a bookmaking workshop, and I was absolutely sure I was not going to make a book, but I liked the whole setup of people bringing in work and editing it, finding the right collection of photos, etc., to actually turn it into a book. Of course, I made a book, and another one, so that whole workshop for me was about the question: am I a photographer? This project later, I'll tell you about the project, of course, but later on in the project, quite recently, the question came up: am I an artist? And I don't know. I would like you to go downstairs. There's a little notebook there that you can leave your comments. And one of the things that you could maybe answer to me is whether this identity crisis that I'm constantly in about my artistic work, is actually heralded or not. So these are my parents. This is on their wedding day, on the 18th of July. Sorry, this is the book, by the way. You can buy it too if you want. It's in A block. These are my parents. They married on the 18th of July, 1963. What I don't know is who the girl is. Yeah, I think she was there for show. She was like adopted from a far family member or something, and I think just for the wedding, and for the photo. And the story really is about them, and about memories, how we remember people. And this is me, the small one, a couple years later in 1967. And this forms part of a collection of work that particularly my mother put together in kind of keeping our memories alive, which later started to play a big role in the life of my father. So my parents had a lot of shared interest. Their big passion was to go on holiday to Norway. I've spoken at length with Cecile and her mother about Norway because there's a lot to share. We also went, but we only went like 3-4 times, but they went 14 times. And they also went to other places: Sweden, Denmark, Iceland once. Also to Spain, because that's where I lived at the time, and that's where their grandchildren were. But Norway was really their big passion. And it was really, I've just recently really discovered how connected they were. I never really thought as a teenager and as an adult later that they could be very connected, because they were so different. And I've really discovered through this project how connected they were and how unwavering and unconditional their love was, which was a really nice discovery. And in that sense, this project is already a success for me, because I made that discovery. What happened was that my mother passed away in 2010. She had fallen ill. She was ill for 5 months, and she passed in November of 2010. And then my father, was left alone. Of course, he had his 3 sons, and there were some other people. But it was a very difficult period for him. And the premise of the exhibition is that it's really about how my father spent 12 years remembering my mother. Because that's really what he did, the 12 years that he was alive. He passed away 2.5 years ago. He tried really hard, particularly in the beginning, to keep going. He sold the car and bought the car he always wanted, but my mother wouldn't let him have, He sold the bigger camper and bought a smaller one so that he could travel in the camper alone instead of with my mother. And he tried really hard, but it didn't really work. And he slid into some kind of a depression. He started drinking for a while, then that passed, luckily. And little by little, he just got lonelier and lonelier. Corona didn't help either. It was really horrible. He ended up in a home. Not in a care home, but it was like connected to a care home, so he took care of himself, but he could make use of the facility. So there were other people there, but he had very little contact with people, and he became really grumpy as well. And it was really difficult for me to connect with him. I found it really hard to really have just like a longer conversation with him about some kind of substantial topic. And again, I have to give it to him. He tried, he tried to be positive. I always asked him, how are you doing? And he said, I can't complain, which meant I've got stuff to complain about, but I'm not going to do it. So kudos to him. And I started thinking about a way to get closer to him. And I thought maybe if we do something together, a project, then we'll have a common goal. We'll have a shared goal, and it'll bring us closer, or at least we have something to talk about when we see each other. So that's where 2 things happened. One is I started helping him with one of his projects, which was his health. So I was monitoring that, and I was going to all the doctor's visits with him, and like all those things. And more my project, I started taking photos of him, particularly to, I guess, capture the kind of the state that he was in, what he was feeling and doing, and how he was managing his life. And I was also discovering nice little details about him that I really liked. He had a really peculiar sense of humor that popped up occasionally, and that really made me laugh. But then it disappeared again, and left me, wishing for more. And so by photographing him, it did bring us somehow closer together. And he let himself be photographed in all sorts of situations. I have to admit, though, small confession, in the beginning I was more interested in capturing some kind of sense of how we were not the same, because I didn't want to be like he was at that point in his life. I'm still dreading to grow as old as he was, well in his 80s, and to become grumpy and not do very much during the day, And so I did a project. Well, I started the project photographing, and then I fairly soon, when I made the book, the workshop leader said, if you start a new project, you have to put it out on social media, because that's a commitment. If you tell people about it, it's a commitment. You have to finish it. So I put it out on social media fairly quickly, and I thought of a project called Not Like You, which my then partner thought was very cruel of me, and probably she was right, because it was all about how we were not the same. And as I continued photographing, I discovered a couple of things. One is that maybe we were the same. And And also that he deserved better from me with the photographs. And so, and this is, one of the, I pulled this photo out. I don't think it's in, no, this one is not in the exhibition. There's another version of this. But I pulled this photo out as one example of how he tried, but it didn't really work. Like, he didn't take care of his surroundings. He didn't take care of himself always. He didn't take his medication, And that's why I thought, I don't want to be like that. So if I do a photo project, let's focus on that. That's kind of where that came from. Yeah. And I started following him around. Sometimes I was in the shot as well, or my shadow was in the shot, because I did want this connection to be there. And it was a big part of the photos were taken during COVID, so even if they would let us in to the care home and they would let us out for a walk, it was a very lonely affair, so that just became more kind of apparent. And I don't know, if you go down and you see the videos, at some point he even says, there were days that I don't see anyone. I don't have contact with anyone. And often, Corona or not Corona, I would call him and say, "What are you doing today?" And he would say, "Well, I think I'm going to call my aunt, whatever, his sister." And that was his whole day. It was like one phone call. Yeah. So this is how, in my mind, this is what I wanted to try to capture. So I now have an exhibition, and that's amazing. It's been an incredible ride. Like I said, the premise is, or the starting point is really to try to discover how he spent 12 years missing and remembering my mother. And luckily my mother helped, because she was very notorious photo album maker. And of every single Norwegian, Icelandic, and whatever holiday, she made an entire bookwork full of text, photographs, daily temperatures, kilometers, what they ate, how much, whatever cost, and the tickets for the ferry, and all of that. It was really, and I have those 40 albums now in my home, in box, well, actually in my storage. And I thought, oh yeah, and my father had told me that he spent his lonely evenings looking through those photo albums. So I thought, oh, but maybe that's what the project is. Not about how we are not the same, but how you are remembering her, and probably how I end up remembering you through my own photos, right? So again, I'm really grateful that I was able to put this together. So this is Carmen Jelmer, this is Rob's wife. He showed up yesterday, one day early, yeah, I know. We have to talk to him about that. And I won't show you the whole exhibition, but I want to show some impressions just from yesterday, in case you hadn't been there. And it's really a combination of the photos that I took of him, which are against one wall, and he kind of looks out at at all these memories that have been recovered from the photographs. My idea was, well, my plan was to find a photograph of them together for every year that they were together, which was between 1962 and 2010, when my mother passed away. But I didn't manage. I did go through all the books. I even contacted some family members for some gaps that I had and stuff. But I couldn't find a photo of them together for every year. Maybe they exist, I don't know. I don't feel like I have to go on a mission to find them now, but, and I did find a lot of photos of my mother, of course, but the thing is, my mother was the photographer in the family, not my father. He was the videographer and the Super 8 man when we were younger. And so I have a lot of photos of my father in Norway and wherever, but not so many of my mother. So that's why it was kind of hard to find. But you'll see downstairs there's this whole timeline, and they're basically what he was looking at the last years of his life, and probably how he was recreating their life and missing her even more, I would say. Yeah, I can't remember what photo I put next. Yeah, so how am I doing on time? To go? Perfect. Questions? No. No. So I want to tell you a little bit about the progress of the project. First of all, I went into it with a different premise. And he was fine with it. I had just come out with this book, and he told me, "Are we going to make a book?" He loved it. It was entertainment for him because, again, there was very little to do in his life. So, you know, me running after him with a camera, and with the idea of some years later having a book or something, you know, that was really exciting for him, and for me as well, of course. And so, in the beginning, it's easy because the space was not very big, but there was a lot to photograph. A lot of things, a lot of mementos, stuff on the wall. There's pictures of him. He's doing his daily stuff, you know, the laundry, whatever, the dishes. Just standing there, drinking coffee, talking with me, and I would just constantly have the camera on standby. So I try to have like a regular visit and take photos of him at the same time. And occasionally I would record interviews with him, just to get this, you know, recorded. And I would make him remember stuff from the past and whatever. He'd get it wrong often, but sometimes not. And so there's a nice little reconstruction there of his life, and particularly his life with my mom. And so this is one of the first photos. I just thought, well, I should start with a few, just portraits, you know. And this is me in terms of the kind of style that I photograph. Usually it's what you see is what you get, or what I see is what you get, because I'm not. I love light, but I generally don't maneuver people around so that the light is best and whatever. So I just, you know, point and shoot really, and that's where, I don't know. Maybe that's even my style. I've never thought about it. Maybe that's the next live question. Once I've confirmed that I'm an artist, we can talk about what style. I don't know. So for a moment I thought, actually, I was I had signed up for a workshop series with Morad Bouchekar. He's a very well-known Dutch photographer, and a really kind man. And he said, you know, you should make it two ways. Maybe you should include some other element there. So I asked him to also take photos of me, which were immediately out of focus, which is okay, you know, it's allowed, of course. But I wasn't particularly liking it, and he hated the camera. He hated holding it. It got him really nervous, and so there's only one of these photos out of the 1,100 photos that I took for this project. It's just one of me, and then he said immediately, "Forget it. I'm not. You can't involve me in this." Of course, he let himself be photographed in all kinds of situations, because again, you know, any element, anything fun was attractive to him, right? So, and anyway, that was also a little bit his personality. He usually could care less what people thought of him, how he dressed, or what he said or did, whatever. Which, you know, as a side effect, meant he had little friends. It's true. It's funny, but also painfully true. And so, you know, wherever situation he was in, he would let himself be photographed. We got away from this idea of him photographing me, but I did. So Morad in his workshops, because I was doing he was doing like a review every couple of weeks of how far I got with the project and stuff. And he would say, "Well, maybe you should do some video." And I've been doing video all my life. You know, I'm trying to be a photographer. And so I never did that actually, and well, time went too fast, so we never tried it. But there was another element, and I'm actually really happy that I discovered this element of the photo albums and the memories as a complement to my own photos, because what Morad felt very strongly was that it needed another element, but we couldn't figure out what it was. But ultimately, that's what it turned out to be. It was these photo albums by my mother. That's what the other element was that it needed. And that's, you know, what it has become, as well as a standalone kind of exhibition. Yeah, here's another example. So we'd go to a shop for new clothes, for instance. And again, he'd let himself be photographed anywhere. I have worse pictures than this, but I don't want to put them up. Yeah, because I don't want to ridicule him, but, you know, he was a good sport to work with. He would sometimes even pose, just for fun. Yeah. Yeah, this is in, I don't know, CNA in Lelystad or something. I can't remember. Yeah, and so the series on that wall, which are the photos that I took, it starts with this image, and I just wanted to touch on it, and I'm almost done. Sorry to, hi Jermaine, Christine. Hi. It starts with this image, because I called in the help of a dear friend of mine when I couldn't make my mind up about the selection of photos that we were going to exhibit, because I had so many, and there were so many that I'd fallen in love with. And he said, if you start with this image, you're inviting people to step into his shoes. And maybe you're not noticing it when you're looking at this image, but from a different angle, the photo albums are there. At least half of them. The other ones were like, you know, in other places. But this is about half the collection, maybe 2, 4. Yeah, it's about 20, I would say. I have roughly 40. Yeah. So that's why that first image is there, and why it kind of starts a series of smaller photographs that highlights some of the quirky elements in his life that were important to him. So there's hardly any people in it, or at least kind of the machinery around his life. You know, a flashlight, his slippers, that chair again, but from another angle, you know. But also the machine that kept him alive the last 2 days of his life in one of the last photos. And I can't remember if I have another picture after this, sorry. I do. Yeah, it was already there, but I wanted to say thank you.